it was awesome and had a lot of fun, just a whole lot of crazy going on. And so we want to thank you all for praying, and I know, at least personally, there was several times during the trip that I could definitely feel the effect of people's prayers, and some difficult aspects and some just having a great time, but seeing the amount of work done and rain being held off and all that. But I'll save that for my part of the story. I'll finish off I'll be the last in line and then share the pictures after that. So without further ado, I'll have Caitlin come up and share.
Does it reach? Can everyone hear me? Just checking. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So as Joel said, this was a first mission trip for a lot of us, and for me it definitely was. And from the very beginning, it was a huge privilege to just go and spend time with the team, and even getting to know some of my own classmates. I don't think there's something that Hannah doesn't know about me now. And just even as a team, just you could see God working through all of it, and it was such a privilege to see that through our team. We were full of unity, and we just worked together with one focus and one goal. And as Alex Eater said in one of the devos, we were a mixed bag of nuts. And we came through different walks of life, different backgrounds, different places from all across the country, and even some people that helped the camp in the summer from South America came, and he helped us for a week and everything. So just to see the differences in all of us, and we could still all work together and do the work that God wanted us to do, and just to see the blessings that God provided through it, each of us encouraging each other, the team, the Thompsons encouraging us, and seeing how he blesses their ministry that they have going there, and just being able to be a part of that work. Like, I can't be there every summer to pour into teens or the families or the kids that go, but to be able to provide more space in another cabin for more kids to hear the gospel and to get to know that there's a Savior who loves them. I was talking to the Thompson kids while we were there, and they were like, yeah, like there's some kids that come and all they want to do is study the Bible. They want to go to Bible school just like you do. And I realize how privileged I am, because they continue to go on and say, but nobody supports them in that. Their family's like, no, like you have to get a job. Like, this is our way of life here. You can't go and do that. So it's just like the Thompsons are there, and they encourage them, and they continue on the work. So to be able to be a part of that and help that was just a huge privilege throughout it all, and just to be able to see God working in other countries and how he works in different ways and everything. Just especially trying to work with other people who only speak Spanish and interact with people who only speak Spanish when you only speak English is very interesting, especially when you look like you're practically a local. So they just assume you speak Spanish and just start going, and I just give them a really blank look and then say, I'm sorry. And they're like, oh, wait, you speak English? And I'm like, yeah, sorry, I do. I have no clue what you just said. So they just continue all in English. But we also learned some Spanish, and it was interesting at times when you can't quite pronounce it right, and they'll like do each syllable with you, and it's like, okay, well, it's definitely different. But even in the church service where it's all in Spanish, and I can maybe pick out a whole 4 words of what the actual message was about, like Christ. That was pretty much the only word I picked out 4 times. But so that was a bit of a struggle. But even though the whole service was in Spanish and I knew absolutely nothing, and we sang in English for them, so they knew the tune, and that was about it, the whole thing. We could still, at least I could still feel that we were all there to worship God. We were all united, even with a body of believers that you've never met in your whole life. But all of a sudden you feel the connection of like our hearts being unified because we all serve the same God, which is really cool, because it's like, you don't know what I'm saying and you don't know what I'm saying, but you both know that we're here to worship and serve God. And to be able to accomplish that, and it was, even though you don't understand necessarily what's going on in the church service or what it is that they're saying, you can still feel God working in your life through that and through the church service and in the lives of the others that are sitting around you. And even though you might stick out a little bit because you don't speak Spanish, or because, well, the rest of the team looked mostly different from the rest of the people that were there and lived there, you could still see how God was working each and individual lives and how he was able to use me to work in other people's lives or use other people's lives to work in me was really, really cool to see. And obviously I don't have a ton of time to talk about my trip and all the amazing things that God did, especially in the way that he raised the funds for me. It was just really amazing to see that. I was sitting there learning about the trip and hearing Brittany's pastor talk about it, and I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden it popped in my head that you should go. You're going to go. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa. I don't know where those thoughts came from, but they should be buried or tossed to the side or something. But then God just continued to bring it up in my life, and then I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. God, now I feel like I know you want me to go. I don't have the money. You must have the money somewhere. I don't know how you're going to get it to me, but you must have it somewhere. So you'll take care of it, and I'll go, and we'll see where this goes. And then going home, I talked to my church about it, and in 3 Sundays, I was fully funded, which was completely amazing. And I was like, yep, he definitely wants me to go. So I just went with the mentality of, I don't know necessarily what you have for me in going. I just know you want me to go, and I'm just going to see where you take place in that. Like, I'm not going to go with preconceived ideas of this is what we're going to do and it's going to be awesome or the work that's going to be done. I'm just going to go and see how you work and just let you work through me and in me as I'm there and not necessarily even think about what's going on because I probably stressed myself out. But he just continued to be faithful in all of it, and it was really cool to see all of that. And Hannah will probably talk more all about that too, so go for it.
So this was my first time on a missions trip, my first time out of the country. I've always just kind of stayed in a little bubble of Canada, and so going, I was really, really excited. And like, if I could pick a language, second language to learn, it would definitely be Spanish. So like going down, I thought about going on the Bolivia trip, but then I like heard that it was going to be more focused on the kids, and not that I don't like kids, I love kids. I just know that there are sometimes people go down and they look forward to working with kids, but they end up going and working really hard on building a wall or a house. And I'm the kind of person that I don't mind going down and building things. I'm totally willing to go down and just work hard and get stuff done. So I was like, I'm just going to let the people who want to work with kids go on the Bolivia trip, and they can have fun with that. And I was like, maybe I'll go next year. And then Pastor Steve came, and he was like, presented the Chile trip, and it was like, yeah, it's going to be a work trip. And I was like, I can do that. And so going down, I just had this mental way of thinking that I'm like, I'm just going to go, and I'm going to work hard, and we're going to get stuff done. And we got there, and like, they fed us like every 2 hours. Like, you wake up in the morning, and we went and we'd do devos, and then you eat breakfast, and then you go to work, and like 2 hours later, they'd stop us, and we'd have a break, and then we'd work for 2 more hours, and we'd have lunch, and then we'd work for 2 more hours, and we'd have another break. And it was like food. And the first day, I just remember sitting down at the first break, and I was like, I could be working right now. Like, I could be getting so much done right now. Like, I could have put up like 3 more pieces of trim or siding or whatever. Like, I was just like, oh man. So the first day it was good, but just like those breaks were really not frustrating, but just kind of like a point, like a sticking point in my brain where I was like, oh, we could be working. I was thankful for those breaks later on in the week when I was exhausted. But just like realizing that during those times, like if our sole purpose is to go down and just work hard, then we kind of defeat the purpose of a missions trip, because it's not about how much work we can get done physically, but about encouraging the missionaries and fellowshipping with them. And yes, working and getting stuff done and helping them, but helping them on more than just a physical level. And so that was something I learned second or third day. It was like, oh, like I can actually go down here and connect with the Thompson kids, because like they're homeschooled. Nothing against you homeschoolers, but like they don't have the same opportunities to make connections with people that if you go to a public school you would. And like they speak English and Spanish. So I'm like, when was the last time that they could actually just like sit down and have kids that are close to their own age who speak English pour into their lives? Like, and so it was really cool to see like how at the beginning of the week, like the Thompson kids, they were like, hi. And then at the end of the week, like we had conversations about Marvel movies, and which I know very little about, but that's fine. I know enough to get myself into trouble. I found out I'd taken down spits, which is, for you Americans, if you don't know, they're sunflower seeds. And so I'd taken them down, and so I brought them with me. I stuck them in my back pocket the one day, and I pulled it out, and I threw a handful in, and they're like, oh, are those sunflower seeds? And I was like, yes. And they're like, we love sunflower seeds. I was like, okay, have at it. Like, and so I ended up leaving my bag of sunflower seeds down there for them to enjoy, but it was just like little things that it was like, oh, like I can actually be a blessing in more than just how I work physically. And so that was really neat. One other thing that was really interesting was, so we're going down there, 5 of us are from NBBI, 4 of us were from the church in Kincardine, and 1 person from Washington, and like, I think I knew most of the people from Kincardine, like by face and name, but I didn't really know them. So like going into this trip, I was like, I have to like, we're just a mixed bag of nuts. And we've never met each other really before. So just going down, I was like, okay, Lord, like, this is either going to go really well as far as how our team gets along, or it's going to go really, really bad. And, like, that'll kind of not make or break the trip, but, like, you can't, like, it's hard to be effective if you're constantly, like, struggling and pulling in opposite directions as other people on your team. And so going down there, I was, like, really reassured. I got talking with the guy who came from Washington. His name is John, and he's crazy, but that's a whole nother story. But just talking with him, because he's been on multiple missions trips. This is his 2nd time to Chile at this camp, and he was just like, the unity and the fellowship amongst our team was unlike anything that he'd ever experienced before on a missions trip. And that was really encouraging to me, because going into it, I knew that unity was going to need to be important. And so to hear him say, yeah, like the unity and the fellowship amongst this group is like really strong, and it's really enjoyable to actually come down here and work when you get along with everyone. And I was like, oh, like I was like, that's cool just to see how God had worked that, because going into the trip I was praying about it. And then one thing that was really funny, Caitlin blended in super well down there because she's short and kind of darker complexion. I stuck out like a sore thumb because I'm blonde and I'm extremely pale and I have blue eyes. So like anywhere we went, it was like, she doesn't speak Spanish. So like people would walk up to Caitlin, and most of the rest of our team too, because like most of the rest of the team had dark hair, so they could almost pass as being a local. So they would like speak Spanish to like, we're going through the airport line. It's like, oh, you know, hola, 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 hi. Hi. It's that obvious, huh? Okay. Or like we'd be walking, like, and it wasn't just at the airport, it was like everywhere we went, they just like took one look at me and they're like, and she doesn't speak Spanish. And I'm like, you are right. So that was really interesting because I like to blend in and like not stick out. So then like go to a different country where they're all like this tall and they're all like dark hair and they speak Spanish, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't, this is great. So just learning to not be okay with not blending in and being okay with sticking out was a fun little lesson that I learned. So now Alex is gonna come up, I think. Wherever he is.
Well, good morning, everyone. I suppose I could give you a commentary or a basic information download, but as far as my thoughts on the trip and to let you know basically what I was doing over March break, I heard about the opportunity, as we all did, and I thought that I didn't want to go at first because it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Spend all that money, go down, do a little bit of work. It obviously wasn't worth all the money I spent, right? I'm not a carpenter. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But then I was talking around, and it was evident that what little work you could do was actually a great help. And so I thought, a paradigm shift, and I chose to go. And I'm very thankful for it. God provided the means, and so we went. And the basic needs were basically construction. What I got to do was primarily just pour cement and shovel a lot of soil. Because their frost line is there's no frost, they bury all of their pipes like 2 feet under the ground. And so you don't drive tractors everywhere, so you have to shovel everything by hand. So we poured a lot of cement and shoveled a lot of soil. And a few odd jobs of putting eavestrough on the house and rooting out these massive stumps, which was a blast. As far as a highlight of something I really appreciated, we got to work with this guy. I don't know, he's between my age and Alex Leader's age. He's about 20-ish, and his name is Koke, and you spell his name like Coke. And he's just this little brown fisherman from like way, way down south. And it was so special to work side by side. He basically only spoke Spanish. I mean, I would say I know a few Spanish words, and that would be about what he knows a bit more than that in English. And so we learned like pala, shovel. I learned what pesalo means. It means heavy. So when he like grunts with the cement pail over the hole, and he says, pesalo, you quickly learn what that means. But it was so special to work side by side with him and hear the missionaries were testifying to his money doesn't have a hold on his heart. So he works as a fisherman to pay the bills, and then he comes and volunteers at that Christian camp to make disciples, right? And then even sometimes we'd be working away, and then he'd be whistling hymns. I'm like, hey, that's kind of funny. And we can't talk, but I know what you're saying, man. So it was really quite special. And then on Sunday, we landed there. We finally arrived at the camp on Sunday afternoon, and then we worked all that week. And then the next Sunday, which was our only Sunday in Chile, really at a church, we got to take communion with the church in Liconray, which is the little town about 10 minutes walk from the camp. And it was a great deal of perspective there's words on a page. Yes, we're all believers, right? But it's more of a hands and heart experience to be part of that, that Christ died for all sinners, and it broadens my perspective. Global Christianity. It was really something to see. As far as what I learned, it was I would say, firsthand perspective on modern missions. It's easy to develop opinions or try and make plans for the future, but at some point, it's good to have hands-on experience. What is that? It opens doors, You can actually talk with the people in their settings and say, this is needs that you could or couldn't meet, right? It was helpful for that instance, and it added dimensions to, I would say, to praying for them. It was good to have better sense of where they are at, and now I can pray for them, remembering their needs. In preparing for this, I thought of, you could hear that they have a leaky basement on the paper, right? A leaky basement. And so you try and pray, all right, God, please help them with their leaky basement. And then you could also imagine, a better perspective would be, I have a leaky basement. But then when you go to their setting and you say, this is what a rotten house looks like, then you have a more fervency for praying for their situation, right? Yes. Would I go again? I think that's a question lots of people ask, and I thought it might be interesting to share. I'm not sure that I would go again under the same conditions. It was good to gain that perspective the first time. And as far as meeting needs, I might go for 3 months or a year. It might be more practical, but I don't know that I would go again for a short-term missions trip if you are looking for hands-on perspective and experience and want to further making disciples among all nations, the nation of Chile. It is a good experience. They take great care of you, and they are doing a good work there, making disciples in that nation. So to provide the infrastructure for that process is, if you like to work and you're inclined, not even if you don't have to like to work, if you're willing to work, it's a good thing to do. So that's basically what I was privileged to do over March break.
Hey guys, so this was my first time out of the country, well, out of North America, and my first missions trip experience. And so it was a good experience, and I learned lots, and probably the biggest thing that I can think about that Alex touched on as well is just awareness of just like the stuff between the lines in like missions letters that we would get from churches or from missionaries in our churches. And Liz Thompson, the wife of Dan, the missionaries there, she told us this story about renewing their passports when they were there, and how like in a missions letter to a church, you might just say like, we got our passports, praise the Lord. But she told us like the story behind it, of like it's a 8-hour drive to like the big city to where you can renew your passport. So they made the trip with their kids, and then when they got there, they realized that they didn't have all the information that they needed, so they drove back, and then they made the trip again, and they made it like halfway, and then realized that the embassy had like closed for the weekend. So then they turned back, and then like the third time that they did it, they like took a bus there and finally got their passports renewed. And like she got sick, and there's like a whole bunch of other details within that, but if you were just reading it on in a letter, then it would be kind of hard to see that or understand that, or it might seem kind of weird if like you read all the details about that, and like so that definitely changed like the way that I'll pray for missionaries, and even like the questions that I would ask missionaries if I was responsible somehow for like missions awareness in church. Just like the questions that I might ask missionaries to just like ask them questions to tell them stuff like what's going on the field so that we can pray for them. It would give me better insight as to what questions to ask. So similar to Alex as well, I guess depending on where you fit in like the disc profile, you can go and maybe do a job in another country and come back and like learn a lesson and all that, and that's good. But if you're like a more on the C scale, you go and just like question everything that you know. And so I questioned a lot about like what I know about missions, and so I didn't really know what to think about it, and I just have a few verses in the book of Acts that kind of help me process it and think about it, because I think it's important to use Scripture to interpret our experiences and not use our experiences to interpret Scripture. And just like the first 3 verses in chapter 18, it says that after these things, Paul departed from Athens and went to Corinth, and he found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had commanded all the Jews to depart from Rome. And he came to them. So because he was of the same trade, and this is the part that really connects, he stayed with them and worked, for by occupation they were tent makers. And he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded both Jews and Greeks. And it goes on to describe the ministry that Paul had in Corinth there. And so that really connected and made a lot of sense to me after going on the trip, just in terms of like Corinth can be described as like a mixture between Las Vegas and New York City and another place that I can't remember. But obviously if you're going to live in one of those places, you're going to need a place to stay and just like physical means to minister there. And so our trip to Chile was really a tent making experience. That's kind of how I would think about it and describe a work trip to somebody, is that you're going to work alongside with somebody that's ministering in that area to help them with their tent making, their physical provisions. So we poured cement for septic tanks so that the cabins could have running water, because in missions you're ministering to mostly the lost and maybe like carnal Christians as well, trying to build up and edify the church. And if you're doing that, obviously, if you're carnally minded or if you're lost, then you might value running water over just being where God's working. So having septic tanks and toilets that flush is beneficial in drawing the lost into this camp so that they can minister to them or just be a blessing as well to the people that come to that camp. And so that's kind of how I see the trip. And I am thankful for the experience, thankful for the perspective, and now being able to pray for missionaries more pointedly, and to ask better questions of missionaries, just besides like, oh, is it hot down there? And ask like, what their needs are, and just be a little bit more knowledgeable and encouraging to missionaries that I come across. And that's what I learned.
Thank you, guys. I will be honest, I kind of had a selfish reason for wanting to go last. Someone asks me a highlight of the trip, and they just wanted to know like a couple of sentences of how I liked it. And next thing you know, 20 minutes later, I'm still talking about how awesome it was and every little detail of what we were doing. And they checked out 5 minutes ago because all they wanted was a couple of minutes of an update. So I asked them to each share for a few minutes so that I would have less to say, because I knew I would agree with everything they said, and I do like between the unity and the experience of knowing how missionaries are living and what exactly is going on there, and just the ability to get involved, like everything they shared, that allows me to spend less time talking, which is better all around, because we only have a day. So, but no, it was so awesome being able to go. And growing up in camp ministry, my heart is with camps. And so hearing an opportunity to go on a missions trip that doesn't cost a whole lot, you don't need you don't need any shots, and it's helping out a camp. I mean, yeah, throw all that on top of the fact that I knew missions trips are important for at least once in your life to be able to go and to help missionaries. I ran out of excuses not to go. I'd often, I'm just going to try to keep this bit short so I can actually show you the pictures we have, but doing 5 years of college-bound, raising money to work at camp all summer long, whenever an opportunity for a missions trip popped up, I'd say, well, no, I can't raise support for two separate things in the same year. That's asking too much. And really, asking too much of God. Like, you're going to do his work. He wants you to do this, and a couple $1,000 is going to stop you. So really ran out of excuses, and not that I didn't want to go, but again, God's just saying, I can't make this any more obvious for you other than actually like sending an angel or something. Like, I want you to go. And so it's just awesome being able to go and work at this camp. And I know I've had several people talking to me about how they weren't entirely sure how to pray because like they didn't have any idea of what we were doing down there. And to be perfectly honest, we didn't really have a whole big of an idea either. It was like when we got there on Sunday evening, we found out exactly what it is we would be doing. So I put together, well, while we were down there, oh, look at that. Yeah. So, like he said, they fed us, and they fed us, and they fed us, and it was all delicious food. There was one dessert that was not necessarily my cup of tea, but it was an interesting time. It was awesome, and I will say, kind of a disclaimer, these pictures aren't in the order I wanted them to be. I kind of finished this at like 11:15 last night, and I finally got the pictures onto the thumb drive. So I'm like, well, I'll just explain these as we go. And these are empanadas. They're the TH sound, not a D. That was one of the ones that we spent a long time figuring out exactly how to pronounce. But so it's kind of like, well, a Hot Pocket, but actually good. Like not processed. So you got the bread, and then it's kind of like a meat and onion kind of contents, and they put a lot of different kinds of ingredients in, but those are kind of the two base. And then there's a homemade hot sauce that you could put on as well as an option. But yeah, it's just one example of a lot of the delicious foods that we had available. This is kind of the finished product. Again, they're not really in order, but just we were working on a cabin and putting on the siding and trim, and that was what it looked like beforehand. It looked all right when we arrived, but we were very grateful for all the work we were able to get done, and so were the missionaries as well. Another picture of the finished product there, on the other side of it. So what had happened was they had an old cabin that was really not good at all, so they had a team come and had taken that out completely and then rebuilt a skeleton of it for their, and this is what it looked like for their summer ministry. We went in at the last week and of their summertime. They had just finished their camping ministry. Wow, okay. Oh, that one's upside down. That was when we first got to Chile. And, that was, yeah, we were actually upside right, but there was a volcano that was nearby. And that's the name of the camp. And their camp verse, and I'll try to speed this up. I thought I had a bit more time, but their camp verse was 2 Peter 3:18, which was grow in Christ. And we each got shirts that said Crecer en Cristo. I probably butchered that, but it was just, that's really what this trip was about, and what the camp is about, is helping people to grow in Christ. Just putting up the insulation, thank you. They used styrofoam because it's not quite as cold there. I'm going to have to speed through these more than I wanted to, but digging out the septic tank, they did use the tractor for the deeper parts. That would have taken forever to try to dig that by hand, but putting on the siding, we put up tar paper and then the siding boards, and that took up quite a bit of the time that we were there. They trusted her with a nail gun, not quite sure why. But no, it was great to see the amount of work that was getting done and how quickly it was getting done. It was a friend of mine, Ron, that I worked with for the majority of the time there, cutting out the pieces of plywood to put up on the rest of the building. Again, snacks, food all the time. We had they had fresh watermelon for the whole trip, and that was awesome. More progress, and that's kind of, they had to put the windows in for the bathrooms, and there's a lot of zoomed in. A lot of work that had to be done to that, and just trying to get it to fit perfectly. It went up a lot of really, really quickly. It was encouraging to see. That's a completos. It's kind of like a hot dog, but better meat, and got avocado and sauerkraut in there as well. It was pretty delicious. That's Crazy John there. He's an awesome guy. That was the septic tank. We built the frame for it. They're working hard and getting that done. These are the bathrooms, a bit darker than that. So that's kind of how it looked when we went in. And we had a lot of American tools, and so we had to have a converter to make it work. A lot of the lumber that we had to use to build, and that was a big lesson I learned. I can't. They don't have a hardware store just down the street. So what you had to work with. Ripping boards down to do the trim, and cutting the siding down to size. She actually found a tool belt that fit her. We're able to relax some evenings and play some volleyball and some soccer, and just had a good time fellowshipping with the Thompson kids. And again, putting trim up, trying to get that to the right size and marking it, everything. The girls working in the bathroom with Pastor Rob there. John did a lot of the plumbing that needed to be done, and again, more putting those in. I don't know what those sideways. That's kind of what I was doing at the time, putting trim on between the plywood. Alex is working with the cement, and they're working there. Another picture of the volcano that was not far away from the camp, but because of the way that we had a hill between us, the biggest threat that the volcano posed to the camp was if it melted the snow up top and went down into the lake that we were next to, sometimes they'd have flooding. So they have a lot of raised foundations in case of any flooding that might take place. There was one time the Thompsons were gone, someone was taking care of the place, sent them a picture of him kayaking around the main building in 4 inches of water that was around in the ground there. On Saturday, we were able to go shopping for souvenirs, and that was an example of the outdoor shops. We got there a little early, they were closed, but they opened up pretty quickly. And further work in the bathrooms, and we were all kind of getting a little tired, and so going a little crazy there, but having fun. Again, I had the Sunday morning service, and it was still encouraging, and like they said, to feel God working despite the language barrier. It felt good to get work done. Laying pipes, again, only 2 feet down, is nice to see how fast it was working and getting trim, caulking up. And sometimes you had to improvise. But it was awesome to see it coming together. Again, putting up boards to make sure that animals couldn't get in the cracks. Sometimes we were painting the building. Sometimes we were painting people. But again, another picture of the finished product. It felt really nice to be able to see it get done. All working hard. Some of us hardly working. But all of us chipping in, doing what needed to be done. And we had a lot of scrap wood, so they had a nice fire going to get rid of the scrap wood that wasn't useful anymore. And some finished pictures inside. Got the windows in, bathrooms ready for tiling, and curtains on it. It just, again, being able to help and make it look a little bit nicer. That was a sunset on the way back in Santiago the sunset against the mountain. That's not the sun, but. And then leaving Chile, it didn't really feel real. It really sped by. And then some more pictures, putting on the tar paper that, again, and that's Koke on the top left there. A lot of fun working with him, and that's the whole team. And there's just the Thompsons in there as well. It was just awesome to get to know them and fellowshipping with them. And yeah, I was going to explain more of that but then I didn't manage the time just right. So yeah, we had a great time. Thanks again for praying. We're so grateful that we had the opportunity to go and just minister to the Thompsons. And again, the Thompsons ministered to us, and it was so encouraging to be able to do that. So.